The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of bad. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throbbing my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too feeble and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty.
Earnestly Podcast coming to you February 8th, 2024. We're back on the NBA grind here, and of course, joining us first time in about a couple months here, our good friend, NBA author, journalist, Greg Hrinya with us, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me again. I always love joining you.
Yeah, and we're actually recording this right as we are leading the trade deadline, which ends. So right now we're recording this at literally just about noon on the East Coast. Trade deadline ends at 3:00 today. We got moves being made already. I wasn't even prepared to talk about the trade deadline, but since there's already stuff already that's happened, we can just dive into the things that have happened so far since we've gone on air. Was I guess the biggest one is Buddy Hield, right? That's the biggest one, right? Buddy Hield going to Philly.
I personally would say it's the Knicks moves. I think Bogdanovich and Burks going to the Knicks. They trade Quentin Grimes. They finally get rid of Evan Fournier's expiring contract. They trade a couple second-round picks. The Knicks have a little interesting thing going on here where they've got quite a few injuries. I mean, even not counting Mitchell Robinson, but just recently you lose Julius Randle to a separated shoulder. You've got OG Anunoby with bone spurs in his elbow. So, those are two of their starters. And that's putting a tremendous amount of pressure on Jalen Brunson. So I feel like you add Alec Burks, you get another ball handler. He's not spectacular, but it's another ball handler. He scored 25 points in a win last night against Sacramento when he was still with Detroit. So, he's still a capable player. Bogdanovich can create his own shot, and he can stand in the corner and reliably shoot 40% from three. So, those are big moves. The Anunoby move, obviously, I still count as maybe not a trade move.
Of course. Yeah.
It's an in-season move where you're adding one of the best wing defenders in the league and assuming that he comes back healthy in the next week or two, even if they hold him out till after the All-Star break, let's say.
Yeah.
The fact that you can now have a 3-4, a small forward, power forward rotation of Anunoby, Randle, and Bogdanovich, and always have two of those guys on the floor at any given time. Plus, you've seen what Hartenstein can do. Precious Achiuwa has been a find. Maybe Mitchell Robinson comes back in March. I like what they've done, and I think the East outside of Boston is pretty wide open. So, we can talk about the Buddy Hield move too. That's a great move if Joel Embiid is there, because if they're throwing doubles at Joel Embiid, you now take one of the better three-point shooters in the league, and you're leaving him wide open in some cases. So, that's a good move if he's there. It's just that I don't know what the timeline for Embiid is going to be. And they can say they're going to reevaluate him in 4 weeks, but okay, he gets reevaluated and how many weeks to ramp up. So, 4 weeks might really be 6 to 8 weeks. And then are you getting 100% Embiid when he finally comes back? And what position are they in at that point? I've watched, I've watched a lot of Philly this year, and I've kept a keen eye on them since he's gone down, and they have not looked that good. And Tyrese Maxey has struggled mightily because
he's quieted down since the fast start.
Because defenses are throwing all their coverage at him. So maybe Hield helps him a little bit, but they're getting blown out in a number of games, and he doesn't look nearly as impressive without Embiid. So it just shows how valuable Embiid is to the whole operation. And they're 30-20 now, which isn't a bad record, but considering that at one point they had 13 losses and were right up there with Boston, Milwaukee, a couple games ahead of Cleveland, it's a pretty big free fall. And even if we know that Embiid is guaranteed to be out a month, where do they go from there? Do they slide into the play-in? Does a team like Miami pass them? I'd imagine Indiana will pass them. So, What is Embiid coming back to? So, I mean, Buddy Hield is a nice player if Embiid is there, but by the time they come back, they might be talking about play-in tournament.
Yeah, and that's the fear too. Like, they beat a lot of wins early in the year, but this injury could be. I mean, I've heard that probably 2 months. I think realistically speaking, you're looking at April to come back if he's going to come back this year, for the playoffs. But are there enough wins baked in to offset? As you mentioned, possible teams below them, Indiana's and Miami's and even Orlando, for matter, that can surpass them if they struggle. That's the big question, and as you said, Maxey hasn't been the same guy as he was early in the year. I think this move is actually a good move for them in the sense that it gives them something to stop the bleeding in the meantime until Embiid gets back.
Yeah, and I mean, they also made another move too, a smaller move. They traded Daniel House, I believe it was to Detroit, into a TPE. I mean, they basically just shed a bunch of roster spots. And I mean, I'm guessing that they're going to go out, they want to be active on the buyout market. So, I mean, I think the reason why, they add Hield, they trade Korkmaz, they trade Marcus Morris, they trade House. So they're basically getting one body for 3 bodies. I think the idea is that unless there's another trade to come here, they're going to be active on the buyout market, which would put them, Kyle Lowry's name, I think, was mentioned. I don't know that. I don't know that's going to be a swing move for them.
I'm surprised.
I thought the move.
He's been bought out yet, right? He hasn't been bought out yet, right?
He hasn't been bought out yet. He's still with Charlotte. He's not going to play for Charlotte, but I mean, he's going to be bought out. I mean, I thought the move for them was DeJounte Murray only because they keep talking about cap space, and cap space is great, but like all the guys who are going to be free agents next year, unless something strange happens with Paul George, like all these guys are getting re-signed. So that availability is not there. It's not like you can say, oh, we're just going to go sign Kawhi Leonard as a free agent, just add him to Embiid and Maxey. There's not going to be that option since Leonard re-upped. Well, so, I mean, you're probably going to need to trade for somebody to use up that cap space. And I guess maybe you're hoping that someone becomes disgruntled. But I mean, I feel like Tyrese Maxey is actually very well suited to play off the ball with how fast he is. So I think if you made
last year with Harden,
yeah, I think if you made DeJounte Murray like the lead ball handler and you made Maxey a guy on the wing, and then he gets the ball and then explodes towards the rim or takes the shot, I feel like that works better than what's going on with Murray in Atlanta. Now, I mean, from what I've read, it doesn't seem like Atlanta loves the offers that they've gotten from Murray, so he's probably not going to be going anywhere. But I thought that the move for Philadelphia was more that, just because I felt like that might have been able to keep them in the hunt a little more. I don't know that Buddy Hield swings anything with Embiid out for 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think it stops the bleeding to some degree. Not stops it, but it keeps them. If they can just go 500 even without Embiid till he gets back, that's still a win. If you guys watching the YouTube page, on the audio side, we have up the current Eastern Conference standings right now. Boston won, obviously, no surprise there. Last time you were on the show, we said Cleveland was a disappointing team, and they had injuries too on top of that. And all of a sudden, they're not number 2 in the East. They've quietly won 7 in a row. I didn't even know they won 7 in a row. I know they've been playing good basketball. Didn't know it was a 7-game winning streak, 9 of the last 10. I didn't see that.
They've done better than that. I think they've won like 14 out of 15 games.
Oh, my Lord.
And what's funny is that when I talked about them as a disappointing team, they hadn't even had those injuries yet. So, I mean, Darius Garland didn't go down for a month. Evan Mobley didn't go down for a month. So, I mean, they had their complement of players, and they would have admitted to you that they weren't playing well and anywhere near where they needed to be. And now, a month, 6 weeks later, you look at them and like they're one of the most dangerous teams in the league. Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen have just done an amazing job of keeping them afloat. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, his name comes up all the time as, the next guy that teams are going to focus on, because people think, why is he going to want to, spend the rest of his career in Cleveland? But I mean, the reality is like they've got good players there. So, I mean, he's got a chance to win there. And I know we might get into it later with the All-Star game, but like when Adam Silver was naming replacements, I mean, not naming Jared Allen as an injury replacement to the All-Star game, I thought was a crime, because when you take Mobley and Garland out, and you're basically just, it's George Niang and Max Strus and, Craig Porter for minutes. And, Karis LeVert was in and out with injuries, but I mean, still there, but, banged up a little bit. I mean, Allen and Mitchell really kept that thing afloat, and not only kept it afloat, but they ascended while they had those injuries. So, I mean, it wasn't as if everybody thought that they were going to be sellers come trade deadline because the season was going to go totally off the rails. It had the opposite effect. And now you're looking at them and you're like, could they make a move in the next 3 hours before the trade deadline and add one more piece, maybe another wing 3-point shooter, just to provide some spacing around the bigs and around Mitchell and Garland. But we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, they've really been phenomenal since we last spoke.
So I obviously we're kind of in the dog days of the season now. We're in February. Also breaks coming in about a week or so. So obviously we're in the dog days. There's a lot to still be played in this couple months and all that. But look at these standings here, and it feels like, okay, we agree Boston number 1, obviously. The assumption was that number 2 was Milwaukee, and I know they're still 33-18, but they don't feel like a team that's even in the spot to be a boss right now. Given even before the struggles with Doc Rivers coming in here now, they fired the coach Adrian Griffin, of course. It doesn't feel like they don't feel stable. They don't feel stable. And now, look at the standings now. They're kind of, they're going to make the playoffs. They'll be a top 4 seed. We know that. That's going to happen. You got Giannis. It's going to happen. I think it's safe to say right now that number 2 is wide open in the East now, right? Or are we still going to say Milwaukee until further notice?
No, I'm really down in Milwaukee. I mean, I can envision in my head the postseason press conference where the Bucks get eliminated and Doc Rivers is talking about what a hard job he had taking over on the fly.
Hard job.
Yeah, totally. I can just envision the excuses coming out after that. And look, I don't think Adrian Griffin did a good job. I think that schematically what they were doing on defense didn't work at all. But I don't look at them as a team that's cohesive. Let me say, I mean, Giannis is playing great. So I mean, that's
Giannis.
Yeah. He's you can, in Penn, you can put him in for 30 and 15 a night. You don't know what you're getting from Lillard on any given night. Malik Beasley's actually been one of the better pickups in the league. Mm-hmm. Lopez has had a down year. Bobby Portis has been very inconsistent. Pat Connaughton is not the same player that he was when they won a title. So I mean,
Greg, they miss Drew Holiday. They miss him more than we realized.
They do miss him. But I do agree with why they made the trade. They needed what Lillard provided, but Lillard just hasn't provided that. Now you could say, it's culture shock for him going to a different place. He spent his entire career in Portland. He's, got some, personal stuff going on too that he's got to deal with. So, I mean, there's a lot on his plate, and I understand that. I mean, Chris Middleton has actually been better than I probably would have thought when the season started. But I mean, it's like you're just getting a lot of inconsistency from everybody around Giannis. So it's just it's just a bunch of good parts that aren't really meshing with each other. And I mean, if you're not connected on defense, I mean, the games that they were losing to the Pacers, I mean, they're giving up 140 points. So, I mean, you're not beating anybody giving up 140 points. And I know that the Pacers have arguably league's best offense, but I mean, at some point when you've got Lopez, who's a defensive player of the year candidate, Giannis, who's a defensive player of the year winner, Middleton, who's been a good defender, like you've still got some players on your roster that should, prevent you from giving up 135, 140 points a game. Even the games that they're winning, like for a long stretch of the season, they had played the weakest schedule in the league. So they were building up a lot of close wins over bad teams. Now, obviously, you can only win the game that's in front of you, but I mean, they weren't really inspiring a lot of confidence even as they were winning games.
Let me put those down real quick, though, on the Milwaukee side. They're an older team, too, also. Is it possible that they're playing, look, we got to make the playoffs, this and that. We wanted number 1 seed, but we're not going to go go crazy. Let's make sure we're healthy by April, and then we'll put a foot in the gas in April and beyond. Is it possible that's still in play?
Sure. I mean, they've got Giannis, and he's arguably the best player in the league, or at least top 2 or 3. So, I mean, if you put him with Jokic and Doncic, and I mean, now that Embiid's hurt, I mean, he's in the conversation for top 3-4 player in the league. And Damian Lillard's still good, and Chris Middleton has been healthier than I think you would have thought, and they still got some role players. So, I mean, just because they're not playing cohesively now doesn't mean that they can't get hot like Miami did last year. You know, I mean, they've got the talent. So, I mean, you know, the thing with the NBA is that it's a talent-driven league. You know, I mean, it's not like hockey where you can ride a hot goalie and you can have 15 guys sort of go along for the ride. Like the teams with the most talent are the ones that advance, and they do have the talent is right there with the Celtics. It's just they don't pass the eye test. But if you're looking at it on paper, I like what they have. You know, I mean, it's not as if what they have is bad. It's just that, like, my biggest issue is that Lillard is giving you a lot of like 7 for 20 shooting nights, and that's hard. That's hard to overcome when he's not going to play any defense. You know, if you're going to have a guy who is a turnstile on one end, and I'm not saying he's that bad on defense, but I mean, just as an example, if a guy's going to be a turnstile on one end, he's got to be good every night on offense. So, I mean, you know, you can't have a guy giving you 18 points and then be a total net negative on defense. So, I mean, I think that's part of the problem, and just the inconsistency throughout the rest of the roster. Guys that they were banking on being good players have not emerged as good players, or, you know, not nightly good players. They're good players sometimes, but you just can't count on them every night.
So you're down the Bucks. I'm slightly down the Bucks, although I still think they're contenders for the title because you got that guy Giannis, and I still think if you know, High to Powers is still one of the best top 3-4 teams in the league when High to Powers when they figure it out. If they're not the second best team in the Eastern Conference right now, or the Knicks, I got a text my bro like 10 minutes ago saying, you know, number 2 team, because he's a big Knicks fan. He goes, number 2 team in the East now, and I go, I don't know, maybe. I mean, they won 9 last 10 games. They even without Randall, they're still playing pretty decent. I mean, this team looks like a team. It looks scary. Are the Knicks number 2 in the East right now, in your opinion?
When we last did this podcast, I said that it was wide open for the Sixers. But now that Embiid's hurt and they're free falling, I'm looking at the standings. The Knicks are the second best team right now. Like, I think that they're better than the Cavs.
Well, they beat them last year in the playoffs, won 5 games, so they can say they claim that.
And I mean, again, this is all assuming health. I mean, if Randall needs to have shoulder surgery, if OG Anunoby needs elbow surgery or something like that, you know, maybe you throw that out. But I mean, when the Knicks made that trade for Anunoby, all the Knicks fans, and I mean, everybody loves homegrown players. You see it like in baseball with the Yankees, you know, they've fallen over their homegrown talent. Blake Barrett was one of the worst contracts in the league for a guy who can't shoot. You know, Anunoby is a 44% three-point shooter from the corner. Barrett's 32%. And Barrett can't really defend. Anunoby's one of the best wing defenders in the league. So, I mean, people like the idea of, oh, Barrett's 22, 23, 24 years old. You know, like, we have this 23-year-old that we're giving up on. But, like, we know what he is now. And the thing with Quickly is that he's due for a big contract extension. And you can't have Brunson and Quickly both making major money in a salary cap era where you can't play them both together. And Quickly was not good in the playoffs last year. I mean, he was basically played off the floor. So, I mean, he's not a great defender, and he's a streaky shooter. So, I mean, that works in the regular season, but, like, I don't know that I want to commit $30 million to that. So what they did was they turned those 2 guys, without giving up a first-round pick, into OG Anunoby, who is a playoff-style player. He will guard the other team's best player. He, you know, on any given night, he'll guard Kevin Durant or Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. You know, take any star wing in the league, and you will put Anunoby on him and feel good about it. So, I mean, those are the kind of players that you need in the playoffs. Getting a lot of regular season stats doesn't necessarily help you come playoff time, which is what the Knicks found out last year when they fell to Miami. So, I mean, they went out and got a playoff style player. Yes, he's a free agent coming this summer, but he's a CAA guy. I'm sure that there's a wink deal. I'm sure that he's going to get re-signed, and I would want to re-sign him. And let's face it, they got out of Barrett's contract, which I thought was, you know, cause for celebration. You know, even if they just got out of Barrett's contract,
and he goes home too. He goes home.
Yeah, and he goes to Toronto, where they're going to be a rebuilding roster. He can work on his game there. It's just what was needed on the Knicks and what's needed on the Raptors are 2 different things. So the Knicks got exactly what they need. Brunson is playing at an MVP level. I mean, I've said this to many people. He's got maybe not, if not the best, top 2 or 3 best footwork in the league. I mean, he can, the way that he can move around in the paint, around the basket, being 6'2". You know, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so sick.
really incredible. And he can shoot threes. He can, you know, use that footwork to get himself open, even though he doesn't have the greatest size. He can create space for himself. So, I mean, he's firmly in the MVP race. I don't think that he's going to win it per se, but I mean,
Right.
you know,
He
is
should be,
he
he
in
should be
the
in the
top?
conversation, I think.
Is he in the top 5-7 guys? You know, sure, I think he should
Yeah.
be. Randall had another All-Star year. Obviously, he's hurt. He's going to miss the All-Star game, but I mean, he's had arguably one of his best seasons. I think they complement each other really well. Everyone always says with Randall, "Oh, we need to see it in the playoffs." Well, I got news for you. If you don't get Randall giving you 24 and 10 every night,
get to the playoffs.
You don't get to the playoffs, you know, or you are in the play-in and you're playing the Celtics or the Bucks or the Sixers in the first round. You know, so I mean, it's like what he does in the regular season matters. And I think people shouldn't lose track of that.
But I'm going to take this time to claim something real quick that the mainstream media is doing now all of a sudden that I did a year ago. Everybody's saying that the Knicks comp is the Pistons, 04 Pistons. And they're saying that now when I was saying this shit a year ago, that their comp is the Pistons of 04. Now, granted, I will still say, based on what we've seen Jalen Brunson in the last 2 years and even a year in Dallas, that height of powers, he's better than Chauncey Billups. I will say that.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, it's a good comp. I think the Knicks have, you know, I don't think people look at Brunson as like a star, but I mean, he's playing like a star. So I mean, you know, I think people think about that Pistons team as just like a collection of guys. Like Brunson's elevated himself to that all NBA level, and then all the other guys all fit in seamlessly. I like what Tibbs has done this year as coach. I mean, people are always going to say, "Oh, he plays guys too many minutes." Like he's playing guys too many minutes right now, but so many guys are hurt. So I mean, the alternative is losing the game. So I mean, he's put them right in position to be a 2 seed. And with the moves that they made today, like they added good depth, they added reliable depth. They get some of their guys back. I mean, with the way they play defense and with Brunson's floor leadership and Thibodeau's preparation, I mean. I wouldn't bet on them in a series against the Celtics, but I mean, I think that
I was going to ask you that.
They put themselves in the conversation, which 24 hours ago they weren't. Now I think that they can feel good about themselves, assuming that Anunoby and Randall come back healthy. They've put themselves in the conversation to have a competitive series with the Celtics if it gets to that point.
Right. So I have up on YouTube page, of course, guys. Check it out, youtube.com/Earnest Christian. I have up the 10 teams right now in the East right now. You see the layout here right now. Celtics 1, Cavs 2, Bucks 3, Knicks 4, Sixers 5, Pacers 6, and then the 4 playing teams right now: Heat, Magic, Bulls, and Hawks in that order. I know it's February. We got 2 months and some odd days before the playoffs. What changes here, Greg? Does this list hold as is? What do you think changes?
I think the Knicks move up. I think maybe the Bucks slide to 4. So maybe this ends at Boston, New York, Cleveland, Milwaukee. Maybe the Pacers, maybe the Heat, and maybe the Sixers drop down into 7. I mean, I could see that happening just based on the injury to Embiid. I mean, again, that's no knock on the Sixers. It's just you take a guy who is probably a lock to win another MVP award. I mean, he was putting up numbers that not even Wilt Chamberlain put up. I mean, his numbers were through the roof, his per 36 numbers. So, I mean, the assists that he was dishing out, rebounds, scoring through the roof, averaging 36, 37 points a game, and not even playing fourth quarters in a lot of those games. So, I mean, his numbers are astronomical. So that's no knock on the Sixers if they drop off. It's just that's the reality of the situation. And I mean, the Bulls and the Hawks, I mean, I could see the Hawks dropping out of there. It's going to depend on the trade deadline and what teams do. I mean, we still have a couple hours left. Do the Hawks want to stand pat? Does a team like the Nets want to stand pat? Do the Bulls want to stand pat? Like some of those teams could easily finish in 11th, and some of them could easily finish in 9th. But I feel like the top 7, 8 teams is pretty set. It's just a matter of can the Heat slide out of the play-in, maybe move into like the 5 or 6 seed if they get hot. I mean, I think the 6 seed is probably their ceiling.
So I will say the Rozier trade's been good. He's been playing.
Yeah. I mean, anything that was an upgrade over Kyle Lowry was a good move. And Rozier was having a phenomenal year with Charlotte.
And most of all, too, also, my wife's blood pressure is now improved since that trade because she cannot stand Kyle Lowry.
Yeah.
Every time you watch him during the playoffs, it doesn't matter. And you might tell her, "Oh, you made a good play." I don't care. Fuck Kyle Lowry. Every time, man. Every time.
Yeah, I mean, he did not seem like a Heat style player. Didn't seem like he was physically fit enough to sort of play their system. I know that Rozier's, I guess, struggled a little bit since coming over, but I mean, he's younger. He's a good player. He's shooting a career best. Yeah, more energy, shooting a career best from three. Just like with the Clippers when we talked about it last time, I think you got to give that a little bit of a feeling out period.
Yeah.
I guess the Heat have been a little disappointing in the sense that I would have thought that after the hard road they had to take last year to get to the finals, going through the play-in and all that, I would have thought they really would have prioritized the regular season. And it's like the same old story, injuries and guys in there at the lineup.
Injury, yeah. And again, I think they're like, much like we discussed with Milwaukee earlier, I think with the Heat, it's the same thing also too. Let's just get to the playoffs. We are capable of winning in Boston, which we did last year 3 times in the series. We're capable of winning in Milwaukee, which they did twice. So let's go with that. Let's make sure we're healthy in April, and then we take off from April. But again, still risky because remember, the same team was literally 5 minutes from losing in the play-in game to Chicago.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
So there's risk there, obviously.
Yeah. And if you wind up losing the first play-in game and then facing Boston in the first round, like I think Boston's going to be more prepared this time. And
absolutely, and they're better this year.
Yeah, they're way better. I mean, that was another unheralded move that Boston made yesterday. They added Xavier Tillman, and people say, oh, add a 6'9", 6'10" burly power forward doesn't really do a lot great. But like, he's a reliable depth player who's going to allow them to rest Horford, rest Porzingis the last 2 months of the season. He can give you a couple minutes in the playoffs, but he's going to be a good rotation player for them throughout the remainder of the regular season. That's going to allow them to go fresh into the playoffs, and I think really try and make a championship run this year.
Okay, let's go to the West now. As I list, and I put the more polished version that the NBA.com family has prepared here. There's the standings right now currently in the Western Conference. Look at that. Look at that top 4. Look at that top 4. Thunder, Wolves, Nuggets, and Clippers all separated with what? A half game, if that? I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah, I love what OKC has done, obviously.
Oh, my God. Yes.
I think Mark Dagnall, you can just write him in right now, Coach of the Year. He's had a phenomenal year. SGA, if he's not your MVP winner, he's definitely in the top 2, 3 at worst.
Were you on the show? I'm sorry. Were you on the show? Because I remember just having this discussion. I'm not sure if I even asked you at the time. Where I said that at the time SJ was playing well too, also at that time as well. And I said that depending on where you had him on your list before you started, individual players in the league, that him being a top 5 player going to next year was actually very much possible. Did we discuss that last time on the show?
Yep, that was the last time I was on the show. Yeah,
I don't remember what you said exactly, but I remember saying that. I think it's very possible you look at him as a top 5 player next year, going into next year.
I mean, you can make an argument he's top 5 player now. So I mean,
that was the discussion that we had, and he hasn't done anything in the last 2 months to change that. And they're winning on top of that.
Yeah. And they're winning. So the only reservation I have about them in the playoffs, let's say they finish as the 3 seed, the 2 seed, 3 seed, whatever it is.
Okay.
It's just that they're so young and they haven't been there before, So I mean, it's like I know they added Gordon Hayward today, but like that's not like, it's not like them going out and getting like a Pascal Siakam or something like that, like Indiana did. So I mean, I just feel like the lack of experience and the lack of veterans who have been there before might ultimately cost them. And that's not to say they can't win a round or two. I mean, they're obviously a great team, but I mean, everything that's relied upon is with youth. So, I mean, I that's just something that, like, my concerns on that list are for the top 2 teams. So, like, Minnesota is arguably the best defensive team in the league, but like, I don't know that they're going to be able to score down the stretch.
Well, that's the thing too. Also, you mentioned, because like now with OKC being even better, we all thought we knew to be good this year. We didn't think we number 1, number 2 seed good.
Yeah.
So now, do the expectations now in a span of 3 months change now because of what they're doing during the regular season? Now, is it fair to say that? Because if he had told me last in October before the year started that OKC goes second round of playoffs, and we say, well, that's a great year. Now OKC second round playoffs exit. What we see now is that still a success.
It
should be yes, but
Yeah,
But
it's
they're
still.
differently though.
I'm not going to move the goalposts on them just because they're still so young. It's not like they are a win now team. Like, I mean, the Celtics need to win this year.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Oklahoma City does not need to win this year. I mean, you can make the argument Minnesota's got to win this year more than OKC does.
Because of the cap situation.
OKC is like low on that list of teams that is under tremendous pressure because it's not like they're going to lose, a 30-year-old guy in free agency, or they've got to make this big contract decision. I mean, they're pretty much set with Holmgren, SGA, and Jalen Williams for the foreseeable future, and then they can add in around those guys. But they've already got their core. So, I mean, and they're a young core. It's not like with the Clippers where, they need to win this year too, because Paul George, Kawhi, Harden, they're not getting any younger, and they all come with significant injury concerns. So, I mean, I'm not really worried about anything with OKC.
Yeah.
A lot of those other teams I look at and I'm like, they are under significantly more pressure. So, I mean, if OKC loses in the second round, I'm not going to move the goalpost and say, oh, that's a horrible year because they were the number one seed on the trade deadline day. I still look at that as an overachievement more so than anything.
Yeah. When we last podcasted, I think we both discussed how the Thunder, because the Thunder and the Wolves were both playing well too at this point too, also in November. But we were saying that, okay, let's see them sustain this. Well, now we're in February now, and they're not only sustaining, they're thriving now. They're on top of the conference now. How shocked are you this is happening?
I'm pretty surprised because with the over-under that Vegas set before the season, which I think was 41 or 42 games, I figured that they would be
for Minnesota.
Oh no, for OKC. I'm
they
sorry.
They were 44. I have it now. I'll tell you now. Keep talking. I have it now.
Yeah. I wanted to say they were like 42, and I figured that was going to be a number that everybody bet the over because they were like the chic, pick there. And I thought that they were going to go under. So the fact that OKC is where they are, that's pretty surprising.
They were 44 and a half.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And they're going to cover that. As far as Minnesota,
they were 42, I think. And I had them under because I thought the infighting of, Edwards being the prop is the number one guy. Does Anthony Towns, does Cat accept that? Does that thing work out? And clearly I was wrong on that one. They're more of a big surprise to me than OKC is, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, they've got established players on their team. So, I mean, I consider Anthony Edwards an established player at this point in time. Like, I mean, maybe he's not like a top player in the league, but I mean, he's still a top 15 player in the league. Maybe he's not in the MVP conversation, but he's still a phenomenal two-way player who can get any shot he wants. I would have agreed with you on the under only because, I would have thought that they would have traded Karl Anthony Towns because he's owed so much money over the next few years that it's like, if you can't have Gobert and Towns next to each other, one of them is going to have to move, and then you're taking a step back. But it's worked so far. I mean, but I also find it funny that there was a game a week or two ago that they lost to Charlotte where Towns had 62 points.
Yeah.
And after the game, and Chris Finch was basically benching him down the stretch. It's like, what does that say about your team that a guy scores 62 points? And he's like, well, we weren't playing the right way, So it's. I just found that little anecdote.
They also blew a big lead to that fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken, as well in that game.
Yeah, and they also blew a lead the other night to Chicago, which is part of my concern for them. It's just that I feel like offense down the stretch of a tight playoff game is going to be a bit of a slog. So I mean, I don't know how because as good as Anthony Edwards is getting his own shot, you also do see a lot of 8 for 23 nights too from him. He's not Kevin Durant out there going 8 of 14 on a given game. I mean, he's a high volume shooter. So I mean, I don't know that I necessarily trust them yet. When I look down that list, I look at Denver and the Clippers as teams that I trust a lot more than the top two. Minnesota has surprised me because I probably would have picked them at like 6 or 7. Maybe not at 1.
I had them as barely a playing team when you started.
Yeah,
because of the infight. My prediction was things will the crater. Cat asked for a trade and then he'd be in New York or somewhere. So clearly that didn't happen. And clearly we're wrong.
And look, there's still a chance that they do blow that up at some point because you've got McDaniels making a lot of money, you've got Ant making a lot of money, and you've got Towns and Gobert making a lot of money. So I mean, they can't have everybody continuing to make big money. So I mean, at some point they're going to have to break that up. if anything, this is their year to go for it, where they have everybody together. It's just
choice,
I don't know that where Edwards is in his development as a superstar player, like as a closer, if that's going to work against a team like Denver in the playoffs, where it's like, okay, you know that Murray and Jokic are going to play that 2-man game and that Jokic is going to get a bucket or he's going to get someone an easy look. Like I can set my watch to what Denver's going to do. I don't know that I can do that with Minnesota, which I think is going to be their downfall come the postseason.
Speaking of Denver, the nice get good at this. Nice transition. Denver Nuggets. It's Nuggets a bust still in the West, right?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa! Hold on.
I mean,
I heard a pause there.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they were playing today in the playoffs, I'd probably take the Clippers, but I don't know that the Clippers are going to be healthy come that point in time.
There's the correct answer though, too.
So I mean, again, if the playoffs started today, I'd feel differently. But if you're telling me that there's still 2 months left to play, I were a gambling man, I'd gamble that one of those 3 guys on the Clippers is going to be hurt come playoff time. I don't think Jokic will get hurt because he doesn't play an aggressive style of game. He barely even jumps. He plods down the floor. He really doesn't dunk the ball. He does not play a game that's like a Zion Williamson type game where it's very there's a lot of stress on the extremities. So I mean, like I don't look at Jokic as a guy who's going to put himself in position to get hurt. Now you could say Murray might get hurt. That's totally possible. But I feel like as long as Jokic is there, you're going to have a shot. I'd be surprised if one of Kawhi or PG wasn't hurt come playoff time. I mean,
right. What I'm hearing from you now is what you're saying is that the Clippers at worst are the second best team in the conference now. Even with the Thunder, what they're doing, even with the Wolves, what they're doing, even with the Suns starting to play a little better now, Pelicans, of course, Kings are pretty decent. You're telling me that it's Denver and the Clippers are now 1 and 2, or wherever you want to put it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that the Clippers have been phenomenal, and I think that that's fair given that the way that they're structured, you can have PG and Kawhi guard anybody. I mean, if they go up against the Suns, like you've got your 2 guys to guard Durant and Booker. So I mean, Norman Powell's been amazing. They got Zubac's back. They got
and shout out to Russell Westbrook for a job well done. He's done a phenomenal job. He's found his spot.
I mean, there was a game where they played the Nets 2 or 3 weeks ago where they were down like 18 points during the fourth quarter. A game that they had just sort of mailed in. And it was Westbrook who brought them back. He's the one who scored 23 points. Kawhi had probably his worst shooting game of the season. It was Westbrook who did all the damage. So, I mean, like their bench with Westbrook, with Powell, with Tice, with Plumlee, like, they've got some players there. Terrence Mann is very solid. In addition to the 3 stars, I like what they've done. I just don't know that they can withstand one of those top 3 guys getting hurt.
So I mean, for the record, I agree with you because I'm there as well too. I think they can go to the finals. I think high to powers, they are probably the best team in basketball, period. Because I think they could beat Boston in 7-game series healthy. Yeah. I think you have a guy like Kawhi that could lock down Tatum. You have a guy like, and you have, again, a Westbrook and Terrence Mann and all those guys. They got the roster to do it. It's about availability. And the reason why I didn't pick them to do anything this year because the assumption was, well, they ain't going to be healthy. It wasn't that they weren't good enough. Like, hey, these ain't going to be healthy. You're going to see Kawhi miss 30 games. You're going to see PG miss 15, 20 games. So the standing, they'll be down in the standings. And that ain't the case, man. And I got to tell him, shout out to Kawhi for really playing basketball. And he's playing every game, at least most of the games.
Yeah, and obviously it's the same exact way. The reason why I've been down on the Clippers for years is just because, much like with the Nets of years past, just not healthy enough. You can have all the stars you want, but if guys don't play, I mean, like look at Dallas. I mean, they talk about Luka and Kyrie. Like Kyrie's missed half the games this year. I mean, like availability is huge for your success. Dallas is probably a better team in 28 and 23. But if they've played 50 games, then Kyrie is already ineligible for postseason awards because he's already missed 20 to 25 games. Like, just doesn't work. So, I mean, my assumption with the Clippers was that one of those guys was going to miss a lot of time. And so far, that hasn't happened. Now, if they can stay healthy for another 3 months, I like their chances. And again, that's why the conversation started. If the playoffs started today, because I would still bet on the fact that the Clippers might not be healthy come playoff time, whereas I feel a little better about the Nuggets.
Right. I don't trust Phoenix. I know they're playing better basketball. I just don't trust them.
Yeah, I don't trust them either because they've got 3 good players and that's it. I mean, they've got the least amount of depth in the league, so I mean, and Nurkic is fine for what he is, but I mean, like, you're basically relying on Bradley Beal to be really good. And you're putting a lot of pressure on Durant at 35 years old to play both ends of the floor, to score you 25 points a game, to give you 10 rebounds, to get a couple blocks, to get a couple of assists. They don't have a true point guard out there, which I think in come playoff time is going to hurt them. I think you can get away with that a little more in the regular season. I mean, look, they've got the talent. Same thing. I don't know if they can completely stay healthy. And I don't know that those 3 guys complement each other all that well. In the same way that, like, Oklahoma City, they've got the point guard, they've got the big man, they've got the wing. So it's like they've got like this triumvirate where like each star sort of covers a different part of the floor. I feel like Beal, Durant, and Booker all kind of want to do the same thing. They all want to go ISO and they all want to shoot jumpers. And they all want to be like wing scorers. Like I feel like they need a little bit more diversity of talent there.
So look at these standings. Like the East, so the same thing here too. And we can touch on the teams we didn't cover yet. You have obviously on the screen, Thunder 1, Wolves 2, Nuggets 3, Clippers 4, Suns 5, Pelicans 6. You're playing teams right now with the Kings at 7, Mavs 8, Lakers 9, Jazz. Utah Jazz on fire, by the way, at 10. What change? Anything? Does this hold? Do the Warriors climb back in the play-in at least?
Yeah. They climb back in. And look, we talked about it on the podcast the last time. We were 100% right about the Warriors' demise. I mean,
they are done.
Yeah. But I think that Utah is not necessarily intent on making the playoffs. So, I mean, like, the Lakers want to be in the playoffs. The Mavericks want to be in the playoffs. I don't know that Utah wants to be in the playoffs. I mean, they traded Simone Fontecchio and Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji in the last 2 days. So, I mean, I don't look at them as a team that's really making a stretch run. Whereas I look at Golden State and I'm like, they want to be in the playoffs. So, I mean, I feel like they're going to grind to get there. Whereas Utah, I think, is just going to sort of fade away a little bit. So, I mean, I could see Golden State being like the 9 seed, let's say, an 8 or a 9 seed. And, I think that list will probably hold pretty much. Maybe New Orleans swaps with Sacramento. I'd imagine Phoenix will probably stay in the 5 or the 6. I mean, look, you can look at Memphis, Portland, and San Antonio, and they're done right now. So, I mean, the only 2 teams.
I feel like if Ja was healthy, Memphis is going to be that playing spot.
They'll
start to play better when Ja got back.
I mean, if Memphis were healthy, they might be the 4 seed. I mean, like, but they're missing Ja, they're missing Jackson, they're missing Smart, they're missing Bane. I mean, like, you're basically taking like a really good roster and taking away all their players.
Yeah, I think actually the fact that 1833 with all those injuries they've had this year is actually pretty impressive, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they played the Knicks the other night, they might have had 12 guys off their like opening night roster, like not playing. So I mean, like,
that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, like, this is an outlier year for them, and that's also why. Total side note: when you see all these trade deadline and postseason trades and things like that, and people scoffing at picks, like everyone scoffed at the Miami Heat picks, saying, "Oh, those picks aren't going to be any good." You have no idea. It's a crap.
You don't know exactly. Don't know
what picks are going to be, because if you had Memphis's pick this year, you would look at that and say everybody would have thought Memphis would be, a 50-win team, and they had all these injuries, and now they're probably going to finish with like the 6th pick in the draft. So I mean, you just can't predict where a draft pick is going to fall, because teams have injuries, teams go in different directions, guys want trades, So I mean, it's just impossible to predict what a team is going to be in 3 or 4 years.
Right. Where do you stand on the 65 game rule for awards? We touched on a couple minutes on that. What do you stand on the rule? Because you saw Tyrese Halliburton be very critical about that 2 weeks ago, saying that he thinks the rule is stupid because, whatever me. I've been critical, saying that I like the rule. I don't know if the number's correct, but I like the intent of the rule. That, like, for me, first off, if you're going to get awards, you're going to get this and that, you got to be available, first off. You can't play 40 games and then say, "Oh, I'm the MVP." No, you got to play games.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think Zach Lowe had the best idea. It's like the first and second team, you can operate by that 65 game threshold. The third team you can use for players who are injured and things like that. So if LeBron only plays 52 games, he should still be eligible for the Supermax. Don't put him on one of the top 2 teams, but use that.
NBA first team, second team, third team.
Okay,
right.
Because now you're affecting guys' salaries,
which I hate for the record. I hate that's embedded into contracts and stuff. I hate that.
Yeah. So I mean, like if Embiid, for example, gets hurt, take a player in 5 years who is ascending to Embiid status and he has the same sort of injury and can't play, and he winds up playing 55 games. Now all of a sudden he's ineligible. Let's take Alperen Şengün from Houston as an example. Let's say he's having a Nikola Jokic-like year next year and he gets hurt and he only plays 55 games and misses the tail end of the season. Now all of a sudden he's not eligible to get paid commensurate of his talent because he suffered an unfortunate injury.
So you're saying this should be a tier system, in other words.
Yeah. But I'm just talking about for guys' salaries.
That
for the awards, I'm totally fine with. I mean, like Embiid was having an MVP year, but if he's only going to play 50 games, you can't give a guy an MVP when he's missed 32 games.
But why put him on NBA second team or third team?
I'm saying you could put him on the third team because he was good enough and he should be eligible salary-wise to make that money. Because I feel like, so like let's say take Şengün, for example. If he hasn't hit those marks before, like Embiid's already hit the number by winning MVP where he can get the Supermax contract.
Right.
But like Şengün shouldn't be punished if he has, if he breaks his leg and has to miss the last 2 months of the season. Now all of a sudden he can't get paid for, the next 5 years of his career. And the only mechanism to do that is to put him on third team. And if he's good enough to be an all NBA player, then I would say I would have no problem doing that. So that's the only issue that I have. But I mean, as far as awards go, I don't have a problem with a guy, playing 58 games and not getting recognized as an MVP.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think, I'm with the tier system. I never liked money being affected by what you do with awards stuff. I think I'm a capitalist. Let it. If he wants to pay him X amount of dollars, let him pay it.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I hate that. 2 more things to get out of here. Kevin Durant, a couple weeks ago was very critical because he thinks that he should be in the GOAT conversation. And he feels like because he said, quote, because I went to the Warriors, why should I be in that conversation? What's that's the question you should ask. Why not? What have I done? He suggests he should be in the GOAT conversation. Now, I don't know where you have Durant on your list all the time, all that. Obviously, people have been very critical of Durant for years because of him going to Golden State, leaving OKC, leaving the team that beat you in the playoffs, then going to the team that won 23 games and won a title before that. We know the narratives around Kevin Durant and how that works. Does Durant have a point, though?
No, I don't think that he's as good as Jordan or LeBron was, and I mean, I don't know that if he hadn't gone to Golden State that he ever would have won a title. So, I mean, depending on where he went. Yeah. I mean, if you had told me that he went to Washington to, because he's from Washington, from Maryland, that he went to go play for the Wizards and he teamed up with John Wall and Bradley Beal and never won a title, I mean, even in his prime, would that have shocked me? Maybe not. I mean, look, he's a wonderful player and he's a top 10 player of all time. And his skill set.
Oh, he is like top 10.
Yeah. I'm saying whether you want to put him at 6 or 7 or 8,
Where do you have him? I got him top 15. I don't got him top 10 yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. 8. I mean, because again, he's going to play another couple years. His numbers are all going to be there. I mean, again, we're comparing these guys to players whose careers have already ended. Like, let's say he wins another title. Again, LeBron didn't, I feel like, get to that stage of being considered, okay, maybe he's not the greatest, but the second greatest until he won that Cleveland title. I mean, that was the title that put him over the top. I mean, people can be dismissive of the 2 Heat titles because he teamed up with a bunch of other proven players. They could be dismissive of the bubble title because of the circumstances around that. Going back to Cleveland and beating that 73-win Warriors team, I feel like is what really elevated LeBron maybe from like 5 to 10 to the pantheon of greats. So, I mean, if you were to tell me that Kevin Durant, when it's all said and done, like why can't he be Larry Bird? Why can't they be similar players? I mean, I'm sure most people have Larry Bird at, 6, 7, 8. So I mean, that's why
I had him at 9 last, and the only thing that hurts Bird at this point is just the lack of years.
Yeah,
because he got hurt like a lot late in his career.
Well, yeah. So I'm saying, if you're saying he's 9 and Durant winds up playing 3 or 4 more seasons and still averaging over 20 points a game, and let's say he wins another title, why couldn't he be 7 or 8? I mean, but I'm not putting him at 1, 2, or 3. Durant, I mean, I'm not putting him.
Right. Well, first off, if you're talking about, if you're talking about GOAT status, even when you have a top 10 list, how many guys in the top 10 you're even considering greatest of all time? Maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4. Yeah. Like for me, anyway. I mean, my list goes like this. It goes Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, and Magic.
Yes. Yeah, I would say the exact same. Yeah.
Right. I'm definitely considering LeBron and Kareem.
Mm-hmm.
And personal bias aside, because I love Magic Johnson's my favorite athlete of all time in any sport. Magic might be in the conversation too at one point. I mean, by those 3 guys on top are other guys I'm considering no matter what. I don't consider anybody else below that. I don't even consider Kobe in the GOAT conversation. As great as he was. Yeah, Kobe's great. Kobe's top 10, but I'm not putting him in that conversation.
Yeah, yes.
The separation, So that's where I think the whole situation gets a little muddy at times, because it's not like we're considering, Steph Curry top 10, cool, yes. I'm not considering his GOAT right now. He does have time to continue, that trek though. Of course, the Warriors got to get much better now because the Warriors are still pulling apart. Yeah. But yeah, I'm only considering 3 guys to go anyway. So and for me, for Durant to even get a breath of that, first off, he's got to win a title. He's got to win a title without Curry. Because the fact that Curry's won without him twice already only hurts him.
Exactly, and that's why I don't put Durant in that conversation, because he joined a 73-win team, and it's like I don't know that he would have won had he stayed in Oklahoma City or had he gone to another situation. I don't. All I can go by are the titles that he's won, and the titles that he's won are not as impressive as the titles that Curry won, or at the very least, the title that LeBron won in Cleveland. So but that's just my opinion.
All right, one last thing to get out of here. One last thing. This has been a great podcast, Greg. I'm glad to have you on again, as always. NBA All-Stars. Here's the rosters. I don't know if you can see it, but here's the rosters currently. You have your starters, the top 5 each side of the starters, of course. You got the West, Luka, Durant, SGA, LeBron, and Jokic is the stars in the West. In the East, you have Giannis and Embiid, who won't be playing, obviously, injury. Halliburton, Dame Lillard, and Jason Tatum. Stars first. Any issue with any of these?
Yeah, I mean, in the East, I would have liked to have seen Brunson over Halliburton. I mean, I think that Halliburton's missed a bunch of games, and also just from a winning perspective, they've had the better record. But I mean, again, we're nitpicking at that point. I mean, they're both on the roster. That's all good. I mean, Embiid, Giannis, those are locks. I mean, Lillard didn't need to be there either. I mean,
yeah, I'm surprised. I would have rather see Halliburton and Brunson both in the backcourt than before see Lillard and Halliburton.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I get that there's a fan aspect to this. So I mean, Lillard, I guess, is more of a.
It's a name value.
Yeah, it's a name value thing. So I mean, I get why he's there. But yeah, I think that Brunson should have been in there in some respect. The rest of the roster, I don't have any problem with any of it. I mean, you could make an argument that maybe Porzingis should have been there instead of Adebayo. Maybe. But, Bam is obviously a very good defensive player. The thing is that you always look at the Heat and their regular seasons are so underwhelming that it's like, oh, well, that's why Jimmy Butler wasn't there, because they had an underwhelming regular season. He's missed a lot of games.
He's on the roster this year as a result.
Yeah.
And then somehow last year he makes all NBA second team last year.
Yeah. I mean, he's a phenomenal player. It's just that he's not available every single night. He's available every night in the playoffs, which is why when he says there's no such thing as playoff Jimmy, there definitely is, because he's
saying that. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, because he turns up, when it's required of him. So, but as far as the rest of the roster goes, I mean, Mitchell, Maxey, Brown, Banchero. I mean, Orlando's had a good year, better than probably most would have anticipated. So, I mean, I have no problem with any of those guys. And obviously the injury replacements that I alluded to before, Randall and Embiid obviously not playing. I would have liked to have seen Jared Allen get one of those spots. Trae Young, okay, I'm fine with. He always puts up big numbers.
The Trae Young he had the numbers, but I think the reason he didn't get him is simply because of the record. The team is enrollment this year, and then some.
Yeah. But I mean, same thing with Scotty Barnes. I mean, he's a good player. Bad record. They haven't really accomplished much. I would have liked to have seen Allen get recognition for
Allen, right.
helping keep Cleveland afloat when they were missing two guys, and they could have gone totally the other direction and been sellers come trade deadline day, which is today.
Yeah, for the rest of the listeners that didn't hear the East roster, the rest of the East roster: Bam Adebayo, Paolo Banchero, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, Donovan Mitchell, and Julius Randle on the East side. Now for the West, we just mentioned earlier, Luka, KD, SGA, LeBron, and Jokic as the starters. Starters first. Let me just say right now, congratulations to SGA. He deserves it over Steph Curry. I don't care what anybody says. That dude has been phenomenal. He's right now, in my opinion, right now, based on what we've seen through 50-plus games, he is a top 5 player in the league, probably top 3, and in the MVP discussion right now. So he deserves it. If I'm sorry, and I love Steph Curry. If they would put Curry out of him, I would have been pissed off.
Yeah, I honestly don't have a problem with anything going on in the Western Conference. I mean, as long as SGA was up there, I get, LeBron's still having an amazing year at his age. His numbers are phenomenal. I get Durant. I get Doncic. I don't know if there are guys who were perceived as snubs, but I mean,
no.
Edwards and Towns are both going to be there based on the record. SGA is going to be there based on the record. So I mean, and
I think SGA's they're not because of the record, because the fact he's.
Oh no, he's dominant. But I'm just saying, like, that's why those guys are going to be up there. In general, you're right. You're right. I mean, he was going to be there whether they were the last place team or not. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if they were a last place team and he was putting up those numbers, he probably would have swapped roles with somebody lower on that list. The fact that he's a starter is because people are taking notice of wow, OKC is the number 1 seed in the league, and he's scoring 30 points a game. So I mean, it's a combination of the two.
By breaking news that that's just traded Dinwiddie to the Raptors for Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, I don't really know what that does for anybody, but
it's just swap money, I guess, and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's not. Unless that's a prelude to another move for some,
possibly.
Some other team.
Maybe you buy out Schroeder. Maybe you could buy out Schroeder and goes to a contender.
I guess.
I don't know how it works.
Then I don't know who the Nets point guard is. So I mean, that doesn't. Yeah. And I mean, if you were going to make a big move, like they were rumored for DeJounte Murray, like you would have needed Dinwiddie's number to put into that
numbers
deal,
work, right? Yeah,
to make the numbers work. So I don't really know where they're going with that, but I mean, there's still 2 hours left until the deadline, so maybe it'll be a little clearer in those hours.
I'll say on the West side, the only snubs I can see is on the Kings. It's De'Aaron Fox, and it's what his name is, the center, Sabonis. Yeah, thank you.
I just don't know who you put them over.
Who do you do? I mean, maybe. I mean, I'd say AD versus the record, but no, I'm not gonna do it. AD's had a phenomenal year, and he's playing games this year. He's showing up.
Yeah. I mean, he's played most of the games. He's been dominant defensively. I don't know that I punish him for the rest of the roster maybe not being great, and also like it's a half season award essentially, and they did win the in-season tournament. So I mean, like the Lakers did have some success. Not that that's factoring into it, but I mean, Davis has played most of the games. He's been arguably the best defensive player in the league. You're putting him up there with Gobert and maybe a couple other guys.
Which actually makes it even sadder why they're still just hovering around 500, even with a healthy LeBron, healthy AD. Yeah, it's still disappointing.
Yeah.
So that doesn't bode well for them in the long term. But then again, they also get that team also that's older and trying to hold firm. We'll get into the playoffs, then we'll turn on the gas when we hit the April. I don't know. Other than that, I don't see other snubs on the Western Conference. I don't see any really, other than maybe Fox and Sabonis. Honestly, I mean, who do you take out of there? Like who would you take out? I don't see any. I mean, you can't take out Towns because
I'm not looking at either one of these rosters and saying, "Oh my God, there was this huge omission." I mean, again, I would have liked to have seen Allen there, but it's not like I'm losing sleep over the fact that he's not in there, So, I mean, it wasn't like there was an obvious one. Jimmy Butler, you would always say, is an obvious one, but he doesn't play that many games.
No,
So,
and
I mean,
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with
yeah,
not being there.
yes. So, I mean, when I look at both rosters, it makes sense to me. So, I mean, I have no qualms with it.
Right. Is there anything else that we need to talk about before we get out of here? Are we...
No, we'll just be waiting to see about the trade deadline, and I guess the next time we touch base, we'll see if what happens in the next 2 hours will have any impact on what we're talking about then.
I don't suspect any big moves, right? Any like massive.
No, I
whales
don't.
move?
I don't expect any earth-shattering moves, but hey, even just trading for a guy like Bogdanovich or Burks could make a difference. Could swing a playoff game. You never know.
It could definitely be a move that can change a team's course of where their ceiling, maybe. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Greg, thank you as always. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at G Hrinya NBA. He's the author of the 5-Year Plan and of the Nets, the tumultuous journey from New Jersey to Brooklyn. He's regular on this podcast now, especially. I'll have back on a couple of weeks, obviously. Enjoy the rest of the trade deadline and enjoy All-Star break and all that good stuff. That was awesome, as always.
Thanks. Looking forward to catching up with you again.
Absolutely.